Penultimate college football playoff rankings are out, and the committee might have given itself some breathing room. They also might have stirred up some controversy. Thanks for listening to the College Game Day podcast. Rece Davis along with Pete Thamel and Dan Wetzel. We're recording this shortly after I just came off the show and talked to Hunter Yurachek. Dan, what was your reaction? I suspected, and we don't see the rankings until they appear on the screen. And I'm not a gambler, and I don't really follow these things closely, but the odds shifted pretty dramatically in the last couple of days in favor of Alabama being likely to make the playoff, and the odds became less that Notre Dame would make the playoff. And I thought, wonder if Vegas is anticipating a switch. Apparently they were, and they were right. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I thought you could kind of see it coming. The loss by A&M, I think, was significant for Notre Dame because one of their calling cards was look who we lost to, including an undefeated team that's number 3, and if you're undefeated, you could be number 1, right? So all of a sudden A&M loses, so there's a little bit of that there. Alabama also won the SEC championship regular season on Saturday, and I thought that was a thing. And I think that the committee would very much like to set themselves up so that if Alabama loses on Saturday night to Georgia in the SEC championship game, they are not getting bounced out. It gives them a little more cushion to not bounce them out, and especially they can't be replaced by BYU. So I think they had all that. Now, my issue with this was, and I think you did a great job with this when you were asking Hunter Yurachek, you said, why? Why did Alabama move up? I think all the things I just said, beside the little side bit about trying to protect themselves. But I think if Hunter Yurachek had said, the reason we moved Alabama up is because A&M loss isn't as good for Notre Dame, and Alabama just won the regular season of a conference, I think, okay, that's pretty good. Instead, he starts talking about how Alabama took a 17-0 lead on Auburn, which they then blew. Then he said they had a gutsy 4th and 2 call to win the game. Well, yeah, but do you get less credit if they had just punched it in on 3rd down? Like, what? That's a criteria? That doesn't make any sense. They forced a fumble on the final possession. Indeed, they did, but so what? What if it was just like he went with all this? This is my problem with the rankings. I'm not going to go through all that again with the weekly rankings, but you sit there and you go, what kind of criteria is this? Just say, look, give me something. Not, I'm really impressed. But it seemed like the committee sat around and watched the Iron Bowl, which many people did, and we appreciate that on our ratings. And just were like, yeah, let's just put Alabama. Like, those are not things. Those should not be criteria. Criteria could be what I said. Hey, the loss isn't good. So I could see this coming, and I think it puts Notre Dame really in the crosshairs, and Alabama's got a little bit of breathing room depending on if they are going to punish people for or not punish. Where are we going on? Can you lose on conference championship weekend?
Well, my big takeaway was the old Duke sliding in at number 25, because to me, that was a bad moment in ACC headquarters. That to me was like they're tipping their hand. If they had not ranked James Madison, they wouldn't have had to show their hand on what to do if Duke wins. By ranking them, I just have a hard time thinking, what is it, 4-loss Duke? Off the top of my head? Five. A hard time seeing 5-loss Duke on the strength of a very good win against Virginia in a big ACC title game, jumping to 24. Now, maybe there's still there's a window to do that. And then Miami sitting there at 12, completely setting up Notre Dame finishing one spot ahead of them. Whether that is for the playoff or not, we'll see as things go. But to me, boy, that was the ACC. Everything fell right for them to get 2 last year, if we remember, just the way that SMU came back in the title game, in the ACC title game against. And this year, everything's coming up Millhouse, as they used to say in The Simpsons. Everything's coming out wrong. Like, it's just the opposite of that. It is just everything is going wrong. So that was James Madison has to beat Troy. Troy's been really good this year. Perhaps there's some reevaluation, but I mean, we don't know what things look like after 25. But to me, that was a blowtorch moment. It's like, whoa, Like that's where this thing's going.
Dan and I talked about it a little bit earlier this week about changing the criteria. This would be so much simpler, and it's also, as the legendary Pat Dye used to say, hindsight is 50-50. But if they just did the if they had used the rankings for tied teams, I mean, but it's really, I think, disingenuous to really put this on the ACC and their tiebreakers. They were trying to be as objective as possible, and they ended up hurting themselves because they should have Miami and Virginia in the championship game, and then all of this would be a moot point, and perhaps they'll reevaluate it. But you got to stick to the rules that are set, and the rules are the rules, and so that's where we are. It will be fascinating if BYU were to lose, and then they decide to put Miami on top of Notre Dame. There are a couple of ways to look at this. One is what everybody talks about is the metrics, the strength of schedule, the record strength, all of that is very close. They are undoubtedly in the same tier, let alone they're in the same groups when they're ranking them, and they take the groups of 6 and rank them by 3. They're undoubtedly being compared against one another right now. But I think what happens is when Hunter or whoever the previous chairs come on, everybody thinks that because of that all 12 committee members voted one way on Tuesday, and then all 12 voted another way on Sunday. All it really takes is, if it's close, is a couple of people who've been agonizing to change their minds. That's why Ward Manuel told us last year that they emphasized in the room, make your decision. This is it. Make your decision about these teams that aren't playing. Hunter then said tonight, that's not the way it is anymore, that they got some clarification and they're going to re-rank them. So Miami, I would surmise, though he wouldn't say explicitly, but I think Miami is still alive. It's not very alive, but still with it. At least they're not eliminated by definition. You're not playing anymore. You're not going to hop over someone else who also is not playing anymore. It will be fascinating if they were to do that.
Didn't Ward do that last year, Rece? Didn't Ward do that last year going into the last one?
Ward, yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah.
Ward
yes.
said
Yeah,
he said make your decision. Meaning on the Tuesday rankings, they said we made our decision. Teams that aren't playing are not moving relative to one another.
Yes.
Like in this case, there would be, if they were still employing that rule from last year, or not rule, but a practice, employing that practice from last year, there would be no way for Miami to go ahead of Notre Dame. It would be settled. And it may very well be now. But they've left themselves room to do so if they choose to do so based on other results and comparative things. I think the evaluation among those 3 teams, and really I guess we should include BYU in it as well. The evaluation is fascinating because there have been many years, and people, we have people at our place that get all up in arms that, Alabama triggers them or whatever. There have been many years where Alabama's resume, SEC has been good and resume has been fine. It hasn't just, even back in the 4-team eras when I'm talking about. And you look at it and the resume's fine, didn't overwhelm, but you watched them play and you're like, dude, come on. Yeah, everybody can see this. They're one of the 4 best. They're getting in. This year, I feel like the resume far exceeds the team. There's no comparison in the metrics between Alabama and Notre Dame and Miami. Alabama wins that going away in a landslide. But you watch them play, and it's a perfectly reasonable position to go, I think both those teams are better than Alabama. So it's I think it's really going to be interesting. That's why I think there's at least a small chance based on what he said, though they are loath, I know, to take a team out that's playing in the conference championship game. But if they play poorly, if they get boat raced, and BYU loses, maybe Miami and Notre Dame both get in. I don't think that's the likelihood, but I think it's possible.
What do you think Alabama has to do? Sorry, what do you think Alabama has to do? Like what? Like what is
not lose by 20?
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, and probably no Jam Miller, right? We don't know that definitively, but probably no Jam like that. It'll be interesting to. I don't. They will. I don't think they will. Georgia hasn't exactly annihilated a lot of teams this year. You know what I mean? They're
Right.
they've won by anaconda. They've like circled. They've been a serpent. They've just sort of circled you and eventually suffocated you. So, but yeah, can you imagine the tension in Atlanta this weekend if the Tide, it's 14-0 in the first 7 minutes? Like,
don't get blown out. Maybe it's 14. We don't know.
Yeah. Greg Sankey would have sweat pouring down the side of his face.
Oh yeah. Watch the referees. Everyone will be criticizing. If you know the swing voters on this committee that could help Miami, my friend Nevin Shapiro has greased the skids for the Hurricanes in the past. And I don't want to speak for Nevin, but I feel that he would step it up again if needed. To if someone needs a condo in Palm Beach or something like that, I'm just saying that that's really what I love. Scandal, and if we could get another bite of that apple, I'd go for it.
They have another guy now, though, don't they?
Oh, they got a lot of guys. So there's Uncle Luke.
Yeah.
And there's I'm not going to throw other people in there.
I think there's a Life Wallet guy. Yeah, I don't know. Not that they would do anything like that. We're joking. It's a joke.
We're joking.
Yeah.
The best thing about the Life Wallet guy was when he wanted the city of Coral Gables to give them Coral Gables High School so he could build the football stadium there. And Coral Gables was like, "We're using our high school. Sorry, a little. I don't." What? Like a city doesn't. But we need a stadium for the games. Well, we need a high school. It's part of like what things happen. That's how cities work. We educate the kids. I don't know. New concept. Anyway, the interesting thing here is, so look, all the listeners get mad because I think the job I'm supposed to have is like, it's Miami should be in, or it's Notre Dame. I'm not. I just want to analyze it, right? Like I kind of like Miami. I think Miami can beat virtually anybody in this field. I'm not sure I'd give them against Indiana or Ohio State. I think Notre Dame can beat anybody in this field. So I think both of these teams are really good and I think they're better than some of the teams that are locked in. But this is how it works. Notre Dame is in a tough spot. They certainly could use Alabama to get blown out in the SEC championship game, and that would test if you lose, do you stay in? Now, they took USC out a few years ago when they lost the Pac-12 championship game. They were sitting at 4. I believe they moved Ohio State in when Ohio State was not playing that weekend. So they've done it in the past, but I think they have they have so many criteria that there are no criteria. So they got to root for Alabama to do this. The big thing for Notre Dame is this. Does BYU win? If BYU wins, Notre Dame is out. BYU is going to jump in. I highly doubt that they are going to move Texas Tech from 4 all the way out of this field, unless it is 222-0 BYU. That's not going to happen. So
Cumberland,
unless you're Cumberland, I don't see that happening. So
Notre Dame's to number 11. It's not like they're losing to 5-loss Duke.
No, they're not moving. So Texas Tech is in. But if BYU loses, do you move them out of the 11 spot? And if you do, or do you sit there and say, well, they're playing a 13th game, Miami, they don't get punished for it? That's the question. Now, do they get blown out? Do they move? I don't know how you handle that. If it comes down to Notre Dame sitting at 10 and Miami sitting at 11, do you really still go with Notre Dame when Miami beat them?
I couldn't. I just couldn't. Like, if I was one of the 12, I just... Yes, you play the games. Like,
That's the question. Do we get to that point? Yeah.
I see every side of it, and I appreciate the committee. I appreciate the metrics, but I just couldn't, in that case, one slot away, I could not vote a team higher that lost head-to-head. I just couldn't do it. You can strain credulity. You can make all the sort of pretzel arguments, and I respect them all, but I just not me, man. If it's my vote, it's not me.
I have them ahead because I think they're better. Okay. But I totally understand the argument. It's hard to do it because you say, well, why do you think they're better? Watching them play, I just feel like that they're more complete. but Miami, the way it has played since its last loss, and really, I guess they kind of started slowly, I think, the Stanford game. But since then, they kind of hammered them. And since then, they've been steamrolling people. And they look a lot like the team I voted number one early in the season. I think the committee probably wound up like I did a little bit. And Miami was almost a victim of its reputation, meaning that, you're like, okay, this is not the same old Miami first half of the season. They're balling, the Canes are back, whole thing. And then they do what they've done the last few years. They blow games, and they've probably been overly penalized for that. And, I do think there's a chance if BYU loses and they move them up one spot, that there will be enough people in that room who get down in the final vote and say, wait, let me take a deep breath and take a fresh look at the whole thing again. And say, I know they haven't played. I know nothing changed since last week, but let's look at it again and make sure that this is where we want to be. Because the thing is, and Miami people will argue this too, and so will many others who don't have a horse in the race. I think Miami and Notre Dame are, as you said earlier, Dan, I think they're better than several teams in this field. Their resumes aren't better than those teams, and their records are the same. But I watched them play, and they both kind of look better, but that's where this comes into the difficulty and the subjectivity and the reason for having the committees to make these decisions. If you don't want to make these decisions, then you've got to have a formula. And then if you go to the formula, then whatever it would be, if you went to, say, FPI, for instance, if you went to FPI, you'd have Utah in at number 9. SC is number 11, and they wouldn't make it because of the conference champion rule. But the teams we're talking about, Notre Dame's 3, Miami's 7, clearly in the field, Alabama 6. And the one that's clearly in is not Oklahoma, is 16 in FPI. So if you went with some type of forward-looking metric like that, or if you even went by strength of record, Notre Dame's 13 and Miami's 14. So they're behind Vanderbilt and Texas in strength of record. So there are a lot of different ways to look at it. But I think when it's that close, I understand it, Pete, because I feel the same way. It's hard to get past the head-to-head when everything else seems close.
Do you think that if the committee picked Notre Dame over Miami, hypothetically, it would be more controversial than the Florida State thing? Because to me, that's the one great controversy of this.
No,
CFP
Florida State
era
was undefeated. Like Florida State, intellectually, everyone knows that Florida State should have been in that thing. I would say, they undefeated.
No, I totally disagree with you. No, intellectually, everybody doesn't know that because I don't. I saw them play without their best player. They were not good.
Their third string quarterback, but their second stringer was going to be healthy.
Also not good. They weren't good without him. They just weren't. You
can't win all the games and not get in. You won all the games. What did I want as a fan? Because you can pull back my old podcast. I said every time Florida State's got to be in. I don't want to see it. I want an Alabama, Michigan. I didn't want to see it.
Yeah.
No, I didn't want to see it. I wanted to see we got this. Yeah, right. That Alabama Michigan game is one of the great playoff games we've had, and that's what we all wanted to see. So this is the problem with this thing. But to me, you win all your games, you get in. I don't know what to do here. Again, I think Notre Dame can win the national championship. I think Notre Dame is better right now than Miami. I think they're better than Texas A&M, but they lost to both of them. I think they're better than Oklahoma, or they're better than Texas Tech. I think they're better than a whole bunch of teams. That Notre Dame team, I want to watch them in the playoff. And I think they can win the whole thing. I think they go toe-to-toe with Ohio State. And maybe. That's where you're getting close. But that's it. Everyone else, fine. Notre Dame. Same with Miami. I feel really good about them. What are you going to do? I think if you're the committee, you're clearly hoping Virginia wins. I still can't believe they wouldn't put Duke over JMU, but I guess they're not going to do it. I think you want BYU to win so you knock Notre Dame out, and then you just can skip the whole Notre Dame Miami thing. You can just sit there and be like, what? And then I think you want Alabama to win.
Right.
So you don't have to, right. It's just, and if all those 3 results go down, then Sunday's boring. But if the results go different this weekend, kaboom, man. This is going to be crazy.
Dan, I think if they get that, you're still going to have teams, and you and I are going to agree on this, that both Notre Dame and Miami are better. I think Notre Dame and Miami are both better than Oklahoma. They might be better right now than A&M. I think they're every bit as good as Oregon. I think they might, as I said earlier, I think they might both be better than Alabama too. But if, that's the way the committee alleviates all of the controversy, is if Virginia wins first, that saves them the James Madison Duke thing. And then if BYU and Alabama win, it's like, hey, they're conference champions. What do you want us to do? Knock Texas Tech and Georgia out? And so that's and heck, I think Notre Dame and Miami could play with Georgia and play with Texas Tech too. Unlike last year, I've used this phrase often. I felt like they had to fill up the 12, and the last couple, it was just, okay, who's less objectionable than the others? The ones that were left out last year, the 3 SEC teams and Miami really didn't have much of an argument. BYU probably had as good, if not better, an argument than all of the teams who made most of the noise last year about being left out. This year's way different, and I don't know that I think it's because I think these teams are great. It's just that I think they're all so similar. And it's like I said earlier, if you are looking at resume, strength of schedule, strength of record, all of that stuff, then you favor Alabama and Oklahoma. If you watch them play, you probably favor Notre Dame and Miami.
Right.
And it's, it sort of depends on what you value. And that's why I don't believe there will be right or wrong answers on Sunday. There will just kind of be better or worse answers.
Oh, no, they'll all be wrong. All answers are going to be
all wrong.
All wrong answers. All wrong. Wrong answers only. And this is a quick point on the ACC, which could find themselves with none. And everyone's going to start howling. But last year they got, as Pete noted, they gifted in 2 when they didn't really deserve 2. Clemson didn't deserve to really be in the playoff. I covered that Clemson at Texas game, like that was a playoff game, and you're like, yeah, it's Clemson. The uniform said Clemson, but this was not a compelling game. Texas was going to win that game, barring just disaster. After a couple plays, you're like, yeah, Texas is going to win. Glad I flew down for this. Like you said, less objectionable. They kicked the field goal and they got in. So some years, and this is why I want this playoff at 12 to cook, and there's 2 reasons. One, over time, some years going to catch breaks and get 2 in. Some years you might get none. This year, the Big Ten is only going to get 3 teams in. They're also going to be 1, 2, and maybe 3. We'll see. 1, 2, 4, or what? They could easily be 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 5, whatever. Or some I don't know, whoever. Ohio State, Indiana, they could get dropped down. Whatever. 3 of the top 5. Last year, the SEC didn't get enough teams in, but this year they're getting it. So if you go over time, it works out. Now, and then the other part with the 12-team playoff, it is extremely unfortunate for Notre Dame and Miami if one or both are out of this playoff, but games have to matter. And Miami fans clenching their fists right now, but you can't lose. You can't just lose. You can't just go to SMU and lose. You can't, Notre Dame botched the extra point against Texas A&M. Like, we want the games to matter, including games in September. The sport's better when you're sitting there in September going, oh no, this matters. Not, you see the NFL, they'll put up like in the hunt for the playoffs. And it's like some teams like 3-8 and you're still in the hunt somehow. You're like, okay, the Browns are going to turn it on. Like, what? Like, I want it to matter still, and 12 matters. And I mean, Miami has had an unbelievable team the last 2 years, and they might get left out twice. But you know what? They slipped up and they didn't win their league, and it stinks. But if you can there's a tipping point where the games don't matter, and I feel like games still matter right now. Every week matters. You lose and you risk a lot.
Yeah, well, and that comment, Dan, reframes the conversation that's going to be the drumbeat through December and January of do we go to 16? And ironically, one of the big reasons why that hasn't really happened yet is because Tony Petit doesn't trust the committee, doesn't want the committee to have all this power, doesn't have the committee to do that. And I know Rece likes the committee a lot, so I don't want to be too critical of the committee, but it's a fascinating. This data point of this 12 is fascinating for future expansion because, like, we haven't even said the word Vanderbilt on the podcast tonight, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and they have a really good resume. They have a really good resume. They lost at Alabama and at Texas, right? Yeah. And they have a couple very good wins. So they have like an elite stand on the table win. Well, when they beat number 11 LSU, they did, and then they don't anymore. And when they beat I forget what LSU was. It was in that neighborhood. South Carolina was 11 when they played them on the road. And that was at the time. So it's just an interesting time where it's like a bad Tetris puzzle. Like the leagues are too big. You have some years you have a good team, some years you don't. Like it's never going to be. It's just like this ACC tiebreaker. You could play this thing out 700 times, and it wouldn't happen this way that a 5-loss team could end up getting in. So it's just a very difficult sport to herd, right? It's just like all these cats running in different directions.
Yep. Schedules matter. Schedules matter.
Yes.
Texas A&M didn't play any of the top 8 teams in the SEC until they did.
That's wild.
Then they lost. Yeah. Now they got to win over Notre Dame. They've looked really good at times, but it's just you can play you could play Alabama schedule in the SEC, you could play Texas A&M schedule in the SEC, and the leagues are just so disparate.
If ifs and buts, candy and nuts, all of that stuff, but Notre Dame makes the extra point or stops what was an ad-lib breakdown play, at the end of the game. They win that, and A&M is either on the cut line or out.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially with the schedule. And that's happened a lot in these big leagues. Pete knows I'm vehemently opposed to the politicians getting involved, but one of the politicians, I think it was it Chip Roy from Texas, who said, well, if we're really going to look at this, maybe we look at all of it and try to figure out why Cal and Stanford are in the ACC on the West Coast and why these conferences have all of these teams. And now that I applaud.
Yes.
If you're gonna look at it, let's look at it.
Let's bring back the Pac-12.
It's a big problem.
The Big East. The ACC, old ACC, bring them back. No, that's the original sin. That's the original sin that we keep having to try to, fight back. And it's mainly, the Big Ten continuing to expand and wrecking the old ACC, the Big East, and the Pac-12. Also, that they need private equity to balance their books. I had to take a shot. But let's listen to them on their playoff plan. They always are they have such great vision for how things should go in this.
Well, what do we think of 24? What do we think of 24? Because that's going to be one of the drum beats.
Terrible.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's an awful idea. I don't love the committee. I just don't think they are sitting in a back room going, let me see what I can do to hose insert person's name here's favorite team.
I like the committee. I like the committee. I'm with you, Rece. I think at the end of the day, they may have made generally very, very good decisions. I think their problem is messaging, and you just roll your eyes. I think anybody listening to Hunter Yurachek, sorry, Hunter, but when you're sitting there telling me that a team went up 17-0 and that was impressive, and you don't mention they then blew the 17-0, don't. You're like, what are we doing here? Like, what is this? If you they just don't explain themselves very well. At the end of the day, again, we may have no controversy. The subjectivity of this committee that the Big Ten is trying to use as a way to jam, what they really just want is to have 3 playoff games inside the Big Ten on championships. That's all they really care about. They want to have a 6-play, a 3 in their league. They want Iowa still in this. The hell, Nebraska might still. I don't even know what the rankings are. You get far enough. Is Minnesota still in this? That's what they want. And so they're using, it's like politics, right? You try to find some little negative that everyone agrees on, where there's a kernel of truth, like, oh yeah, the committee's too subjective. Well, yeah, nobody likes the committee, and they're trying to get what they want. The committee is fine. They explain themselves terribly, but they're fine. And it's way better than all of a sudden having that 24-team playoff is really like a 30-team playoff. And it's completely out of control because all the play-in games and everything. I'm with you, Rece. They're not that bad, but they have a bad image.
Your point is perfect. We don't need to be hearing about rushing yards. If it's a differentiating factor, if you say a team is better on the line of scrimmage than the other, and that's why, their resumes are similar. We've watched them play. They're similar, but the one big difference, we think they're better on the lines of scrimmage. I can accept that. But they went up, then they had a 4th and 2 call. That's too far down in the weeds. And I don't even mind if they say, you know what, we sort of reconsidered.
Right.
People wouldn't want to hear that they don't want to drop out a team that, won the tiebreakers and finished first in the league in regular season and then is playing in the championship game. Maybe they don't want to say that. But what I think would be acceptable to people is, we kind of reconsidered this. We try to start from scratch every week, and we felt like we were a little punitive, for that loss they had to Oklahoma. We still are holding the Florida State loss against them, or else they would be much more highly ranked. But, we thought we were a little overly punitive about Oklahoma. We reconsidered. We looked at everything again, and this is how it came out this week. To me, that would work better than trying to – it's almost like sometimes in the past, and maybe I should just say this to Hunter. I get a chance to talk to them sometimes ahead of time. We believe you watch the games. We believe you. You don't have to prove it to us. I really get annoyed with some of our colleagues who go, these guys don't even watch. Yes, they do. They all do, and they take it very seriously. You don't have to prove it that way. Just tell me the most important things that carried the day in the rankings. How many different people changed their minds about something? You say, hey, you know what? We had 3 committee members who've been wavering, and they changed their minds this week. They don't have to name them. I don't need to know which ones. If you tell me a couple of coaches in the room changed their minds this week, they watched and reevaluated and said, you know what? We need to rank them this way. I would accept that, a lot better than some of the things that we get.
I wouldn't even care if they watch the games. Some of them. Like if they just were like, we're analyzing the results. I don't care how the result came in. I wouldn't care if they had at least a couple of the committee members like, I don't watch. I just analyze the numbers.
Well, they break them up, Dan. So somebody has the math.
You win.
So somebody's watched UMass like 6 times this year in that room. So and then somebody has the Big Ten, and I think they usually pair like a coach with an AD, and then they go through it. But they do. If there's one thing those guys do is they watch like a lot of. They end up watching a lot of football. So what do we think? Are we gonna have controversy this weekend or what? Like, are we gonna have someone leaving the dry cleaning out in the parking lot?
We can hope. I know we got the 1-2 game. How about Ohio State, Indiana? I mean. Like, have we ever heard of a 1-2? Yeah, go ahead, Breeze. No, I mean, this is Buckeyes coming off this incredible, almost like religious victory. They get the weight off their shoulder. They go to Ann Arbor. They don't just beat them. They're tougher, right? They're tougher than Michigan. They finally get that whole thing out. Remember when, Ryan Day, they beat Notre Dame, and Ryan Day's like, we're tough. We're Ohio State. It's like, yeah, you got to have to prove it against that team, not Notre Dame. And they proved it. Great thing. Now we've got this this Ohio State season has been frustrating me because I feel like this team is so exciting and could have provided so many great games and moments and memories. And the schedule was so bad that we didn't get to see them do anything. We saw them in the first week, and then this Michigan team was completely overmatched, but I'm sure every Buckeye fan had the greatest day ever on Saturday, as they should. And they finally proved they're tougher, and they did it. Now, let's go. Indiana, let's go. Like, this game is huge. It doesn't really matter, but in terms of watching a game, I'm fascinated to see what happens.
One of our colleagues who is he wakes up in the morning and the first thing he says to his family is OH, and they answer IO. I mean, it's not anybody on the game day. Say it doesn't work for game day. I ran into him in the airport today, and he said, does it even matter? The Big Ten championship. I mean, if that's not an indictment of conference championships, I don't know what is. But I told him, I said, I think it matters a lot to Indiana. I can understand the Ohio State thinking of, and he didn't mean like not try to win. He meant like, boy, you don't want to get Jeremiah Smith hurt, in this game with the playoff coming up. But, I told him, I said, I'm from the Mike Krzyzewski school. If they're giving out a trophy, I want it. So I think Ohio State and Indiana will be in that boat. But I think it's particularly a big deal to Indiana because they haven't won anything since, 1967 or whatever it is. And, I think this is a really, really big deal to them. It's a big game. It's going to be a great game, fun to watch, all of that. But it's, the buzz around it because of the playoff, and they're both in and they're both going to get buys. And, the whole thing, it's taking a little steam out of it. That's why under the Davis plan, we'd be playing first-round playoff games this week on campus.
So how long until we unwind from conference championship games? How many years left?
That's a TV contract money question.
I know. No, it's a complicated question.
I don't even know if they can. It takes them forever to do the right thing. It's just, this weekend should be Army-Navy. Right. If you want to still honor that, or we got to move that thing to the start of the season or something. I understand the politics. Like I can sit there and say, well, maybe Army Navy doesn't need to be a standalone day, but I'm not the one lobbying Congress. That feels like a political loser across the board. Bipartisan. I love the Army Navy game like everybody else.
Yes.
Yes. Although I noticed it does not get the ratings of everyone says they love it. Not that many tend to. Not as many people.
Have you ever been to one, Dan?
I have not been to the Army Navy game. So there you
Rece,
go.
I'm sure you have, right?
I have. Yes. It's really cool.
It's really cool.
Fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we can play that this weekend and then start this playoff. The conference championship games. I mean, look at what we're talking about here, right? Going into this weekend, we have this 1-2 matchup, but whatever. It would be better if they played in the regular season. We're literally sitting there saying, can Duke upset Virginia? Like just put Virginia just give Miami the auto bid. Or we're saying BYU gets a second crack at Texas Tech. They already beat them. Texas Tech already beat BYU. Or we're saying if Alabama doesn't lose by too many points.
Yeah.
Like who cares about these games have no value at all. That's it.
And
so keep it
and
close.
Alabama's already beaten Georgia.
And they already beat Georgia. Yeah. So why are we doing this? Just make Indiana and Ohio State co-champs, and maybe they match up in the playoff. And your friend OHIO, he'll care then.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We won't get in the weeds of the unwinding of these, but there would have to be some, if it goes to 16 or whatever, there would have to be some significant influx of money to compensate because while there is not a lot of juice, Fox is wed to the Big Ten title game. ESPN is wed to the SEC title game. And they're great. And the leagues, I think this is underappreciated point in this. The leagues, like the SEC loves a celebration of itself in Atlanta for a long weekend, right? They do the Hall of Fame and they bring back the guys and everybody comes and, it's like Blazer McBlazer season and here we go. And like in the same thing in the Big Ten, right? Like it hasn't gone on as long, but it is an identity piece. And to give up that identity piece, to give it the money and the rating that go along with it, to then help the holistic sport, which, as we know from many conversations about this over the years, all of us have had, there aren't a lot of people looking out for the holistic sport. They're looking out individually, which is totally fine, but that's just then the guiding light. So I think everyone kind of realizes, like in the conversation we had, like these aren't that relevant and these aren't that great. And somebody brought up the point that, Carson Beck got hurt last year in this game and missed the CFP. And it might have cost Georgia a shot at the national title. They maybe could have advanced more. Who knows? But like once we start seeing more things like that, I think there's going to be a little bit of a domino.
It was, and it still is, the Georgia-Texas atmosphere in the building, Texas first time in it and all of that was great. The atmosphere for some of the SEC championship games I've been to over the years has been better than any of the bowl games or most any of the bowl games in the and national championship games. Just the sheer electricity was particularly good in the old Georgia Dome because everything was kind of, compacted in there. But when you expanded the playoff, this was one of the casualties, was the pure intensity of the conference championship games. That it's not, I'm not saying they don't matter, and I'm not saying that all of them won't be great on Saturday. We won't have fun watching them, and the fans won't have a blast going. They will. But this is not, Tebow against Saban starting the Alabama dynasty. This is not, old school LSU and Tennessee and stuff like that. And I've told the story many times that Philip Fulmer said that the rush of adrenaline that he felt when he led the Volunteers to the SEC championship game was far greater than when they played for the national championship in terms of just the juice that you felt when you stepped into the arena. And I don't know that we'll have that anymore because of the things we're talking about. It's not going to just disappear Saturday, but just over the course of years, as you get more and more Ohio State, Indiana matchups of 1 versus 2, which sounds great and will be an awesome game because football players like to play football and they like to compete. So it'll be awesome. But in terms of stakes and what happens, the thing that you feel bad for the team, but it draws you in to watch if this is all or nothing. And when it's just most of it and a little something, that's different than all or nothing. And that's kind of where we are right now with the expanded playoff, and certainly where we would be if we expanded it further.
I got a little side. This is sort of a question that I know the answer to, but like, let's say you're Texas Tech. If you knew you could lose the game and end up at like 6 or 7, not fall very far, and get to host a home game in the playoff, would you take that? Would you rather lose the Big 12? Now, I know they're not going to throw the game and they're not going to do
It's a trophy. But
it's a trophy, but now you get no home game and you're going to get Oregon at a neutral site. And opposed to maybe a game you can win at home, which would be the biggest event in the history of Lubbock, and then go play your thing. And I wonder what's better for a program. Now, look, Texas Tech's going to try to win the game. I get all that. You get a bye. It's one less. Or, is Texas A&M better off right now than Alabama by not having to play in this thing? They're going to get to host a game. They get a bye this weekend. They don't have a chance to get a bye, but they're not playing this weekend while Georgia and Alabama are. Is Ole Miss better off? They're certainly better off not playing this weekend because imagine the chaos. Are you better off not being in it? And that's kind of a side bit of this. I feel like Ole Miss and Texas A&M, maybe I should use them as an example rather than Texas Tech, but Ole Miss and Texas A&M are like, yeah, cool, Oklahoma, go ahead. You guys go play. We're going to host a playoff game.
I'll take your hypothetical, Dan, and expressing the caveat that we're all saying nobody is saying Texas Tech should try to throw the game. Nobody's saying that. We're saying that, like, if you come to the set of conclusions at the end and that were to have happened, what are they better off? Yeah, heck yeah, they are. Especially if you're Texas Tech. If you wound up 5 or 6, particularly 5, I think you played the home game. Yeah, you're better off. I say Texas. I would say A&M and Ole Miss from a playoff perspective. Again, sticking with the things, they're giving a trophy. I want it. I'd like to win the conference. But looking at the results, what's better for your fans? What's more fun? What's going to have more energy and juice? Home game, baby. I'll take the home game. And then we'll win it and we'll go on to whatever the next round is.
Like Oregon won the Big Ten title last year and then had to play Ohio State in the Rose Bowl and got, it was like that didn't work out so well.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah.
I would say of our game days this season, Texas Tech was the most electric scene. Would you agree with that, Rece?
Yeah, I think so. It was great.
So
it was really great.
We showed up, Dan, on Friday morning to go to walk through at Texas Tech. Rece and I drove over there, and we got out, and it felt like the morning of the game, 24 hours before the game. There were thousands of kids sleeping out. Like one of the wide receivers played a country. It was just I mean, and that was for a big game. One of the biggest games they had on campus in 20 years. If with a playoff game in Lubbock, can you imagine the economic stimulus? The scene would be electric, like completely electric.
Playoff games are the best. We need 2 rounds of them.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. You can't.
100%.
Yeah. Punishing the top 4 to not have a home game is silly to me. It's just
the bowl guys will tell you who they used to argue this. I wrote a whole book about it. Who would want to play a game in Lubbock, Texas? You can't play a playoff game in Lubbock, Texas, or Norman, Oklahoma. Or we need an antiseptic NFL stadium surrounded by parking lots.
Far from where all the fans live.
I was like, no, everybody wants to play the game in these stadiums. Like everybody. One of the greatest parts of college football are the stadiums. Everyone's unique. Every campus is unique. How many people, they take a weekend trip every year. I'm going to go here. I'm going here. I'm going here. I just want to check off. It's incredible. There's nothing quite like, I know they do in baseball and things like that, but there's way more diversity of the stadiums and the campus experiences and all of that. Celebrate that. But again, to a larger point, they don't do stuff for fans. Like, let's give extra. No, they sit there and say, hey, congratulations, Texas Tech. You're a big fan of Texas Tech. You're now going to have to go on the road 3 times to, Ohio State fan. Yeah, the Michigan game on the road. Now you got the Big Ten title in Indianapolis. Now you're gonna have to go. Then you got to go on the road 3 times if you want to see your team. You're never in Columbus. That's your congratulations. You're either a gazillionaire and got to go to all the games and had all this time off, or you're watching on TV. And for those fans in Columbus, now last year they had a home game and many of them didn't show up. But I would like to see them and the communities that support this sport all year round get that, at least an opportunity for 1 game, maybe 2 home games.
Should we pick some games?
Yeah, I was about to. I was going to say, as we get ready to pick some games on championship weekend, I want to remind everybody it is V Week. Of course, ESPN closely affiliated with the V Foundation for Cancer Research, and we encourage you to tune in tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, across ESPN networks and platforms for a special opportunity to see Jim Valvano's Don't Ever Give Up speech. His message is as relevant today as it was 30 years ago. And you can support Jimmy V's goal of achieving victory over cancer by visiting v.org/donate. 100% of the donations go directly to cancer research.
How do you go from where you are to where you want to be? And I think you have to have an enthusiasm for life. You have to have a dream, a goal, and you have to be willing to work for it.
So let's do a 6-pack of picks here, and we'll start with the game in the SEC, Georgia and Alabama. This will be the 5th time they've played in the SEC championship game. Dogs are 0-for. Pete, do they change that on Saturday?
They do, Rece. I think they do. Georgia has been more consistent this season than Alabama. We'll know more closer to game time on Jam Miller, but he didn't look likely to play in the second half of that game last week, and they're down. They got a key injury at tight end, and I just think that Georgia has found ways to will themselves to win. They've sort of it's like a learned skill. So I think they're going to push forward. It's going to be Gunner's night.
Am I going to pick Kirby Smart against Alabama? Kirby Smart beats everybody but Alabama. 1-7. It's a befuddling stat. Oh, it's very hard to beat Alabama, but still, other than the title game. Forget it. I'm sticking with Alabama. Sorry, Kirby. You got to show me you can do it. You got to show me you can do it. I'll take Alabama.
They've lost 10 out of 11 to Alabama, even predating Kirby. Alabama believes that they're going to beat Georgia. I mean, they just have an innate confidence when they play them. Georgia won a big moment when it sort of had to have it in the national championship game, or else this would have been even worse in 2021 season. I think Alabama's got another gear on offense. I think they can elevate their game. I think they can get some more explosive plays. I think this is going to be a tremendous game that won't be a blowout. Come down to the end, it will be a cathartic victory for the Dogs. So I think that Georgia repeats as SEC champion and nips Alabama. And then Alabama holds its breath, believes it's okay, but has a very anxious Sunday until we reveal the rankings and the bracket as to whether the Crimson Tide will hold on and make the college football playoff. 1 versus 2. We touched on it, Indiana and Ohio State. A year ago, Indiana had pretty significant communication issues playing in the Horseshoe. They'll be in Indianapolis this time, and certainly there will be plenty of Buckeye fans there. But with this being a first-in-a-lifetime situation for Hoosier fans, you got to think that they're going to cover that place up and that there will be a lot of their version of red in the crowd. I think this Indiana team is better than last year, and I'm not sure the game was quite as lopsided as the score wound up a year ago. Dan, what do you think? Do the Hoosiers break through and win the Big Ten, or does Ohio State keep rolling?
So I love this game. I'm excited for this game, and I hope both teams play full on, and I hope everyone gets through the game with health. I have a general policy, especially when you're not talking about the spread, which we're not. Never bet against Ohio State. Just pick Ohio State. And so I am going to violate that. I am going to go with Indiana, and here's why. I know. And so what is my ironclad rule? Never bet against. This is how smart I am. I'm like Hunter Yurachek coming up with stuff. Hey, he had a 17-point lead. Sure, they lost it. And I don't do you know how football works? It's 2020. Anyway, Indiana wants this more. They're going to have the crowd. And I feel like there's the potential that Ohio State there's going to be a little bit of a letdown. They just came off this physical, emotional, cold game. And Indiana kind of just got to cruise in, winning the old Oaken bucket. I'm going to give Indiana that and say Indiana wins this game. And I will probably be cloaked in shame by Saturday night and say, why did I violate my cardinal rule?
So fascinating matchup, right? Really, really interesting. I mean, somehow, some way, what Kurt Cignetti has done in Indiana, I think, has been underrated, right? Like, and they've gotten plenty of credit, but he's now sitting here at what, 22-3, 22-2. Yeah, that's right. And his losses were to the two teams that played in the national title last year. At the losingest program, still the losingest program in the history of college football. It is completely mind-bending, mind-blowing. And then statistically, you look at this this Hoosier team. They are number 4 in total defense, and they are number 5 in total offense. Like, they're just a pure juggernaut. That said, I'm not going to violate Dan's rule, especially after Dan violated his rule. The remake of Ohio State, I think, has been an undertold story this year, right? They went out and they play a bunch of 12 personnel, 13 personnel, some 14 personnel. They have turned into an NFL team right before our eyes. Like, when Ryan Day took over there, they were going to outscore you. They were going to score 50. He went for every fourth down, right? Like, and as you know, here we are in year, I think 7 of Day, maybe 8. With Matt Patricia's defense, they've just completely changed. Now they have the best defense in the country. The difference in this game last year was the lines, and I still think there's a higher grade of player on both lines. So I'm going to take Ohio State, but it's going to be a grinder and it's going to be a great game.
I already hate my pick.
I already hate my pick. The one thing that worries me.
What did I do
about Ohio? The one thing that worries me about Ohio State is we don't know for sure how they'll react if they're pushed and they're in a tight game in the fourth quarter, and they're going to be Saturday. I think Indiana is good enough to stay with them. I think Mendoza's an upgrade at quarterback. They're really good on defense. They're experienced. They got a bunch of old guys on that team, but I'm not going to violate the rule. I'm not picking against Ohio State. I think it's really hard to repeat. I was asked today for one of those Inside the College Football Playoff shows to pick who I think would win. And I said, I think it's extraordinarily hard to go back to back. I mean, really, really hard. you got to figure at some point you're going to stub your toes, step on a rake, or even just not quite have your A game. But I can't figure out who I would pick to beat Ohio State. And I'm tempted to pick Indiana. Can't do it. I'm gonna stick with the Buckeyes. I think they win the Big Ten championship, go in as the number 1 seed. Big 12 championship, huge ramifications. Texas Tech, as we talked about, should be safe. BYU, hey, look, they've been frustrated. Their fans have that they haven't gotten their due as an at-large consideration. They apparently, Pete Broke, going to retain their coach after some interest from the outside at Penn State. You got to think that BYU's feeling good about life, Pete. Who do you think, BYU or Texas Tech?
So it'd be interesting, Rece. BYU did not play well in this game in Lubbock. I was told they had a ton of communication issues at the line of scrimmage in that game. That was a cauldron. I mean, you were there, Rece, but Mahomes is Pickett. That place is just going nuts. So, and LJ Martin had just come back from that shoulder, wasn't himself, the tailback who kind of makes things go. And since that time, Bear Bachmeier, the leash has come off a little bit, no pun intended on Bear, but they have really let him. They've really let him go and opened up the pass game some. They've gotten healthier at receiver, so I think we will have a much closer game in Jerry World than we did in Lubbock earlier in the year. That said, I think Texas Tech wins by a field goal, but I think this could be one of the best games of the day.
Yeah, I agree with that. BYU had 3 turnovers in that game. And like you said, the cauldron, the excitement, you get down like that, it rolls away from you. So I think it will be closer. And Bear Bachmeier's gotten a lot better. He's been one of the stories of this season. I mean, you think about they lost their starting core. That was the bit that everybody was worried about with BYU. Loved the team, but then they lost their quarterback. Well, he stepped right in. I just think Texas Tech is a really tough matchup for BYU, particularly on the defensive line and the ability to stop the run. And I don't think BYU will get that going. I'm going to give that edge to Texas Tech, but it's not going to be 29-7 this time.
I don't think it'll be that type of blowout either, but I agree. I think Texas Tech is a bad matchup for everybody that doesn't have an elite offensive line. They're one of the teams that I could see winning the national championship. Now, the one thing they did in that BYU game, now they took advantage of a muffed punt early, but they kicked field goals in the red zone, which is something they've done a lot, but they've done less of recently. They've been getting in. If they do that, they get it. If they get 6s instead of 3s, they are going to be a handful because those guys on the defensive front, Jacob Rodriguez at linebacker, and they're strong enough in the secondary. That's a problem, man. I think it's a closer game. I think BYU acquits itself well. I think they'll play with a lot of energy, and I don't think they're good enough to beat Texas Tech. So I'll take Texas Tech, not as close as you guys think. I'll say they win by 10. ACC championship game. Everybody in the world probably that wants to see chaos is rooting for Duke. The ACC is rooting for Virginia, I'm sure, so that they'll be insured of getting a team into the college football playoff. Virginia has already beaten Duke this year, but I will, for the 500th time, borrow from my friend David Pollack. Duke is very talented, but they not only have a tendency to shoot themselves in the foot, they empty the clip and blow off every single toe. What do you think, Virginia or Duke?
Well, yeah, it was 2 weeks ago, I think they played, or 3 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Virginia beat them soundly. Here's the thing about when you're a 5-loss team, you're not that good. You lost 5 times. I hate to break it.
You lost to UConn.
Hunter Yurachek to know that.
UConn won 9 games, Pete. Come on.
They still lost to UConn.
Virginia's going to win. They beat them 34-17. This is not like, okay, let's see Notre Dame A&M again. Like, yeah, maybe Marcel Reed leads that drive at the end, or maybe they don't. I don't know. I already saw this. Virginia's better. They're pretty good. Chandler Morris is really good. They've got this thing. I mean, Virginia's not getting talked about. Indiana stole Virginia's act, right? This is Virginia. They're going to go to the playoff. They're having this great season. Elliott has turned this whole program around out of nowhere. They got this. I think Virginia seizes this, and they beat a not very good Duke team.
Someone told me a story this summer about Chandler Morris that I don't think I ever saw anywhere. When he got there, he got in front of the team, and he said, "I didn't come here to go 6-6. I came here to win a spirited adjective national championship." And it kind of shocked the people at Virginia, right? Like it kind of got them going. So, Chandler, go win your national championship. Sorry to Handsome Bob and the James Madison Dukes. We're going.
I relayed that story, Pete, Saturday on Game Day. I lead to the film room and then said, well, basically did sort of like a variation of a patronizing. Well, isn't that cute and naive? Isn't that just adorable that Chandler Morris would talk about that at Virginia? Because Virginia has never, ever, even when they were in the same conference with Washington and Lee, never has Virginia won a conference title of any kind outright. They shared a couple, 30 years ago being most recently. This is about revenge for the Duke Blue Devils. Forget what happened 2 weeks ago on the football field. Nobody cares about that. This is about revenge for coming in and stealing the baseball coach from the Blue Devils. They stole Chris Pollard. This is about the revenge for 14. I will take the upset of the Duke Blue Devils. I can't do it.
I was wondering where that was going. That was
Duke.
good.
I can't trust Duke. I can't trust Duke.
No,
I want to do it because that's what it's really about. That's what it's really about, is trying to avenge the stealing of the baseball coach. But I can't do it. I got it.
Not so fast, my friend.
Duke.
This is a man.
Yeah,
they
blow all the toes. They blow all the toes off of their feet. I can't do it. I'm taking Virginia. I wanted to. I worked myself into a frenzy. And
you had that going, like Lee Corso, like Pat McAfee. You had the crowd going back and forth. Like, you've definitely studied at the feet of the masters. You couldn't do it though.
Who's running down the track, Rece?
I wanted to desperately do it. And for the record, Chris, if you're listening to the podcast, I don't blame you for going. I get it. Duke should have poured more money into baseball and made sure they kept you. Anyway, I digress. The American Conference Championship game is North Texas and Tulane. The way things have fallen, the American is going to get a participant in the playoff. Who will it be? Will it be the Mean Green or the Green Wave, Pete Thamel?
So if you're an Oklahoma State fan or a Florida fan, do you root for your incoming coach to win because it would show he's a good coach and be a showcase for your program? Or do you root for him to lose, get his tail on a PJ, and get him to campus by 7 a.m. the next day? A fair conundrum, right? Like, we could do a whole podcast on that.
Yeah.
I'm going to take Mr. Morris, Mr. Mestamaker, and the Mean Green of North Texas. Maybe Neil Brown, the new coach, will be in attendance for the festivities. But I think the explosive offense will be a little too much for Tulane to keep up with.
Oklahoma State, one heck of a job getting Eric Morris. Like, they snuck in there and maybe got the best guy out of the. Everyone's hiring an American coach. To land
the quarterback too, Dan,
and the quarterback, is he definitely going with him?
It's not like signed in blood, but that's been the assumption.
I mean, it is a great job by Oklahoma State, just great hire.
Mm-hmm.
And if they get the quarterback too, and then there's been like this weird backlash against John Summerall because he's a group of 5 coach from Louisiana, like Billy Napier at Florida. Like, Florida fans are like, we've already seen this act. Like, it's a different guy.
Yes.
Like, they're different schools, concepts, coaches, not even in the same league. Like, let's broaden out. I like Tulane in this. I think Summerall's a really good coach. I think these are both really good coaches. I think they're headed for big things. This is gonna be a really good football game Friday night. You should watch. But I would not be surprised if John Summerall and Eric Morris are 2 of the bigger names in college football going forward over the next 10 years.
Tulane was in the American Championship game a year ago in frigid West Point, and Monken and the Black Knights of the Hudson took them down, really took them apart, and won the American. This time, Tulane gets it at home. Boy, I really like this North Texas team and the way they can score, but I'm going to go with Tulane too. I think the Green Wave win it, and Morris moves on to Oklahoma State, and Summerall has more business to tend to in the college football playoff. And then the final pick will be the Sun Belt Championship. Now, nobody's going to be a bigger fan of Duke than the Dukes. James Madison now ranked. James Madison takes on the Troy Trojans, former employer of John Summerall, I believe. JMU, Troy, Dan, do the Dukes put on the pressure by beating Troy and winning the Sun Belt?
They do, and they get, I think this 25 ranking makes the possibilities open. This game is Friday night. They're not going to know what the Duke Virginia thing is until Saturday. The game is in Harrisonburg. I think the scene will be, if you remember last year, the same thing, Friday night, Boise State punched their ticket at home, and the scene after that game, there's some great games in Boise, was just pandemonium. The stadium is sold out, the big night. Now, James Madison isn't going to get to assure themselves they're in the playoff, but they're going to be able to show out and say, hey, we got a chance. I expect that crowd and that stadium and everything to be absolutely wild. Huge advantage. This is a really good football team. I think James Madison wins.
I will not take, if in terms of like the pregame libations, James Madison is a 1 seed in any playoff. All right. Like that night, place, maybe? Man, yeah. That place goes at game day, I'm often on like a little island somewhere, just like surrounded by students. In the morning, we're at James Madison. I looked out and I was like, I have never seen this many people this drunk at like 8:52 in the morning. It was like, I was like, yeah. The Goose Crowder is back for Troy at quarterback. He had been banged up for a good chunk of the year. He played really well against Southern Miss in that game. I think that James Madison is going to be a little bit too much, but Troy's going to be feisty now. They have Jared Parker's done an excellent job there, but I think Bob Chesney wins, and like imagine JMU popping up in that bracket.
Clean sweep. I'll go JMU. You guys aren't expecting this. We're going to pick one more game because of this. If Troy wins and if Duke wins, does it open the door for the Mountain West to get back in? Maybe not for Boise State with 4 losses, but UNLV is a 10-win team. Now, they had to go to the computers to sort out their tie to find out who was playing in the Mountain West Championship game. But just give me a quick pick. Vegas or Boise State, and also within your pick, you don't even have to give me a reason for your pick. If if Troy and Duke win, will the Mountain West get a team in the field again this year? So tell me, Vegas, Boise, who wins it?
I would say no, they will not get it in. I think they'd end up going with Duke, but I don't know. They don't do after 25, so we don't know. That's going to be wild again at Boise. Game is in Boise, Idaho. But I am taking UNLV. Dan Mullen gets UNLV to the playoffs. Florida, he never could, and Florida can't do it without him. So I'm going to go with that little wrinkle that UNLV gets there in Dan Mullen's first year.
Maddox Madsen back starting for Boise, which is a huge deal. He had a pretty significant injury and missed a big chunk of this season. His return bolsters the case for Boise. So I'm going to take the Broncos.
I'm going to take the Broncos also. They win it, and I agree with Dan. If all of those things come to fruition, Duke would get in the playoff, and we would no longer worry about 3-loss teams getting in the playoff, because then a 5-loss team would be in the playoff. Guys, excellent work. Great job. Enjoy championship weekend. Dan, we'll miss you. Pete, I'll see you in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. Thanks for listening to the College Game Day podcast. Subscribe, never miss an episode, or download where you prefer to get your podcast.